There we are live. Hello, beautiful souls. Happy New Year, happy 2021. And thank you so much for joining us. I would almost just want to clap and give you all a big hug and say, yay! Fantastic new start. And with me today, I'm super excited to share this space with these beautiful people. Magenta Pixie, of course, a lot of people know you, and Simon and Becky Parks of Connecting Consciousness. And you three are in the UK, aren't you, right now? Mm-hmm. And I'm in France, so just to give us some position. And basically, I just really want to thank you guys for showing up. It is New Year's Day, of course, and I feel really honored that you actually took this time and we've come together, and I really love you for that. Thank you. And also, I'm going to be sharing some topics that people have asked me to raise and things that they want clarity on. And I think people are, had a tough year last year. A lot of people, well, maybe you'd like to share actually how that was for you, what your last year was like, and actually what you personally want and wish for. You guys are in the panel, if you'd like to share anything like that personally from yourselves. But it's been, obviously it's been a tough year for a lot of people. And so this show today is the intention here from us is to really give you some clarity on anything that's been confusing, and to really bolster, really, give some power and give some levity to the hope inside all of us, and to shine light on what's really real. That's my intention for this, and even to shine light on something that maybe isn't so real, what's perception and what's reality. So, and also I just want to say to all our beautiful viewers, anything that we share in here is our opinion at this time, in this moment, and we're not telling anybody what to think. And one of us may share an opinion and another one of us may have a different opinion. So it doesn't mean that because we're all here, that what we're saying is the ultimate truth, nor do we may not agree with each other. I just want to make that clear. Some people have reached out to me with concern about some of my guests because they have different opinions. And I just want to say, look, we're all just sharing. That's all we're doing. So you believe what you want to believe. But welcome, guys. Welcome, Becky. Welcome, Magenta. Welcome, Simon. How are you doing today? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
New Year.
How are you feeling? Did you wake up feeling different this morning?
Who's that? Who are you addressing?
Oh, anybody who wants to jump in. No, go for it.
Well, I have felt different the last few days, I have to say. At the beginning of when all this started back in March, a few days before we were kind of told that we were going to go into going back to our houses, I felt the energy of tyranny and planetary takeover, all of those things very, very strongly. And that's been on and off throughout 2020, easing towards the end of 2020. But I felt it very strongly. So I knew it was not, there was a story going around that we were being told to go back to our houses because the white hats were wanting us off the streets because they were doing all of these cleanup operations and wanted us safe. I knew that whether there's some truth to that somewhere, the predominant energy was not that, and it was the nefarious bad ones, if you will, speaking in code. I don't feel that energy anymore. I don't feel that nefarious attack. I feel that that's been pushed right back. And now there's so much going on behind the scenes and so many things are occurring that there's a lot of freedom. But also I believe that's because we have gone into a bifurcation of realities since the conjunction on the 21st, the solstice. And everyone who's made the choice to move into a new earth reality of creation rather than seeing everything as a collapse and a destruction is going to be feeling different and feeling quite free and excited, because they're not seeing reality as falling apart and everything they've ever known being destroyed. What they're seeing is truth coming out and a rebuilding of something real for the first time in thousands of years. So I feel different because of that, I feel. So yes, the energy is different for me.
Thanks, Magenta. I'm going to come back to a couple of things you've just shared there in a sec. Simon and Becky, do you just want to check in and how's it been for you? How have you been feeling the last week or so coming into the new year and since the solstice?
Well, I'm happy to go first. We did focus quite a lot on the solstice, and Simon and I wanted to go out and see the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter, but it was very, very cloudy that night. And then a couple of nights later, I walked down the road at around 5 to 6 o'clock in the evening, because that's when we could see it, before it sort of dips off into the horizon. And we saw it absolutely beautifully. I had seen it as they were coming together in the weeks coming up to it, but it was just so amazing to see again just after. And I know a lot of people were talking about the amazing energy on the 21st. I mean, for me, I think because we were just so busy in the run up to Christmas, I had the magic moment on Christmas Day, actually. And we'd had lunch at my parents', and then I went for a walk with the dog just at sunset. And we had the most stunningly beautiful sunset. It was absolutely, you know, vivid pinks and reds and golds. And our local river had flooded, and into the park and the racecourse, everything's flooded. But the swans were all out and gliding on the floods, and the sunset just made everything beautiful, reddy gold. And I just stood there thinking, this is magical. This is absolutely magical. And you know, me and all the other dog walkers were standing there taking photographs and snaps of the beautiful pictures. But that's when I really, really felt the impact of the beautiful energies. It was a moment of peace and calm after we'd had floods and storms and, you know, within the weather, because I'm very weather centric, because I like being outside and connected to Mother Earth. And that's when I felt the real blessings, the real connection to, you know, the sun, the planets, and the beautiful, peaceful, calm energy on Earth. And that for me sort of has carried me again through the last week.
That's beautiful. Thanks. I actually didn't see it. I just couldn't see it. It was every time I went outside about that time in the evening, it was cloudy, and we have a big building here. We have to climb right to the very top of it to be able to see, and we've got some mountains. Never saw it in real life. I'm so a bit gutted, but lovely that can kind of hop in on your experience there and feel that.
I think it's because it is low in the horizon. By the time it gets dark, it's just about 5 or 6 at night. So it's just literally, but you've only got a window of about half an hour from when it gets dark, so you can see the conjunction to when it sort of disappears over the horizon.
Thank you, darling. Simon, what are you thinking, feeling?
Well, hi Tara, Magenta, and Becky. I'm very honoured to be invited amongst this divine feminine. I don't feel out of it, but I feel that it's
You're certainly not.
interesting. Just things that struck me was the only place that I was aware that white hats or good guys were using the cover of the stay-at-home order was Australia. And in most other areas, I totally agree. It wasn't some clever plot by the goodies. It really was part of what is supposed to play out. And that follows on for me to say that, you know, within connecting consciousness, we sometimes get different areas, whether it's this country or other countries, where it gets to melting point. They get very entangled with the physical world around them, and they become destabilized by that. And it's all very well for us to say what I'm going to say, but of course it's difficult to put that into practice. But the reality is, this had to happen. This had to happen. It was for millions of years. This was already designed to occur. And this is all about a big choice. Everyone's getting the choice. And yes, I do believe that there's a bifurcation, a division. It's still not too late for people to make that choice, but it is occurring. And one of the greatest things people need to let go is the 3D physical actions and how that individual chooses to interpret what they are feeling and seeing, and how they interpret within their own selves and how they express it. And so, you know, what I guess what I'd like people to aim towards is to be able to not be so destabilized or badly affected by something that's actually rather childish, because these people who are perpetrating this are errant children, and it will just play out, and it is going to be good at the end. And so, you know, maybe people think, you know, they're just got their head in the clouds, or, you know, they're not worrying enough about it. Make the joke by holding my hands up and saying, look, my fingernails aren't all bitten down yet. I just think that the bottle has been shaken and the cork is yet to come out. That's where I think we're at.
Can I thank you so much for sharing that? And I think you guys have hit on a really important point, this bifurcation. And that's something that people have asked me to ask you, because there's 2 points around this. And I want to use the example of the British NHS hospitals. I've heard 2 very distinctly different stories in the last few days. One story is, oh my goodness, the hospitals are overrun, my friend this and my sister that, and this, that there's not enough staff, or there's no room in the hallways, patients are piled up, they're full to capacity. That's one story that looks very, very real. There are people in full hospital. Then there are other people saying these hospitals are completely empty and there's nobody here. So it's like, how can those 2 realities exist side by side, where for one person who believes in the reality of it, the hospitals are full, and somebody who doesn't believe in the reality of it, the hospitals are empty? There are some people saying this illness is very, very real. Here's the proof, here's the proof, here's the proof. And there are other people, you know, I posted something the other day from the Irish government that said, we don't have a sample of this illness. We cannot detect an actual sample to actually show you, and therefore we have to admit that it doesn't exist. There are 2 distinctly different realities playing out. And so people, I think, are worried with it because it seems to be in such huge conflict. How can that be true and that be true, and which one is true? And if that is the bifurcation, if that is the separation, what about the people that are in 3D in the fear, believing it's real? Because that, it seems to be that camp, doesn't it? It's like, if you're a starseed or a light worker or a conspiracy theorist, we're all in one camp and we're in the 5D world. And then those are the people that are going, well, it is real and we have to do this and we have to do as we're told and follow the rules, because bad stuff's going to happen if we don't. So, you know, and that's the 3D world. And then, of course, this is splitting families, it's splitting relationships, where one person has one reality and one person has another. And people are worried and scared and going, well, what's going to happen to them? Are we all going to ascend? Are we all going to be okay? Or are there lots of people who are going to die? And what about the people who don't know, who are in the middle? Which is a big lot of people. Do they just fall down into a black hole? What happens? So what are your thoughts and feelings on that?
I'm happy to go first here and sort of jump in. I hear exactly what you're saying, where a lot of the spiritual people who are more sort of with 1 foot more in 5D are saying, you know, there's no evidence of it, and hospitals are empty, and those that are more 3D are sort of saying, oh, you know, virus exists. Well, I would like to think that I'm quite, you know, fairly spiritually evolved in terms of the sense that I do my spiritual work and I am aware of connecting with different dimensions and so on. However, personally, I haven't come, you know, into contact with the virus, but we know family and friends who have, and very recently, we know someone who's been in hospital with it, who's actually, you know, 8 months pregnant, and there the hospitals are very busy. And that's in Britain. I know someone very lovely in the US who's just been in hospital all week, and he's very, very spiritual. In fact, you know, works with the archangels all the time, and it's very much involved with that. Absolutely floored by coronavirus, and has been on all the meds, and is just, you know, saying, thank God the meds are helping, and he didn't have to go on the ventilator, that sort of thing. And also, when I was in hospital a month ago and I had an operation, and I was chatting with the staff, and they said that all the staff from the place where I was, during the lockdown, during the earlier situation earlier on last year, like March, April, May, when things were busy, all the staff, hospital staff, was in the main hospital, and they were rushed off their feet, and lots of people did pass away, including younger people. And that's a reality that I was being told about firsthand. But again, like you, I can also see the other side. I can see both sides, but we definitely are aware, and there are members in our organisation, Connecting Consciousness, where the virus has touched their lives in very strong impact, you know, including losing members of family, including young people and elderly. So it does seem to be having an impact, and it does seem to be real. But I don't hold any fear over it. I feel personally that if we, you know, taking vitamins like vitamin D3, you know, vitamin C, drinking tonic water, there's a whole range of different things that we can do to help boost our own health. And I personally feel that that goes a long way to protecting us. So that's my thoughts on it.
I had it actually. I mean, what everybody then started in January the 1st, this time last year, I got really ill. It was like I was breathing in, you know, when you go into a really damp room and you breathe in the moldy air and it feels like you have kind of moisture on your lungs. I felt like that this time last year. And I was like proper sick for 3 weeks, and it took me months to recover my energy, and my breathing didn't recover fully actually until I did my I Love You Me method. And I didn't know why I didn't think of that for months and months and months. And that literally changed my lungs, like literally overnight. But I was guzzling colloidal silver and vitamin C and, you know, loads of things like that, and taking my vitamins and stuff. So I was like, yeah, there is a flu. Lots of people had it as well in January, all over the world. I was talking to friends in different countries who had it at the same time. And then it came out in March. But I think the point is, like, there is an illness, there is a flu, there is something that's affecting people clearly. But then I also don't believe, personally, I think it is part of a plan. I don't actually think that there's a lot of reality to what's being told. Personally, I feel like that. But then, you know, what do you guys think? What do you think, Simon? What do you think, Magenta?
Well, I'd just like to say that 6 years ago, I had it. I was very, very ill for 3 months with breathing difficulties. I had to call an ambulance because I was getting like mucus stuck in my throat. Yeah. I was very, very ill, and it went on and on and on. And I couldn't do anything other than just sort of, you know, lie down and take vitamins and eat healthily and wait to recover. Now, if I had that now, they would say it was COVID. But I had it 6 years ago when COVID wasn't even around. So I think you have to put it into perspective and realize that we do have respiratory illnesses. We've had them for years. And I've been in hospital before where it's absolutely chocker. And again, I'm going back 6 years. So full that people are lining the hallways. There are people in the corridor outside and can't even take their patients out of the ambulance into A&E because there's no staff. This is 6 years ago. So it's true that hospitals are absolutely bursting at the seams like they always have been. And it's also true that some hospitals are completely empty with no case of COVID. Both are true. And I think it's also important to remember that your belief creates a reality, and you will be given events and situations and evidence in your life to prove that the reality you hold is true. That doesn't mean it's true. That means you're creating a match to your belief. So you need to work out, where is the actual truth? Where is your belief coming from? And are you creating a reinforcement that's matching your belief? Or are you walking in alignment with actual truth? And this is why one needs to take a spiritual path in order to be able to see clearly. And like Simon said, you have to interpret something that occurs to you. How are you interpreting this? Are you interpreting this third dimensionally, or are you looking deeper? And as Simon says, and as we've all spoken about, we have a choice to make. And that's what the end of 2020 was about. The whole of 2020 was a precursor to the choice. The choice coming in with this bifurcation on the 21st of December, and 2021 being the year that we are now making that choice. As Simon says, it's not too late. And I am told that some people will choose the negative path, if you will, the path of control and being hijacked without realizing, and they will change their mind once they become aware and switch to the positive. They're the people that will need rehabilitation and healing, and that's all occurring in 2021. So I think we need to get this perspective about this bifurcation, and really look at what that means and understand that. And to do that, you do need to have multidimensional or spiritual or metaphysical information. You need to be an analytical thinker, a spiritual thinker. You can't just live within the four walls of the linear box, or you will forever be confused, because that system is now not just breaking down. In many ways, it's already broken down, and we are in something new now.
I mean, I certainly believe that, you know, papers and TV are always making things out to be worse than they are. I certainly think there is an agenda driven along with this situation, no doubt. Yeah.
That was another question, actually. It was about the mainstream media, you know, because I think, have any of you said this about mainstream media coming down or being dismantled or being exposed? And so people were like still wondering, is that happening, and when is that going to happen? Do you know these answers? Does anybody know?
Well, from what I see, it's going to happen gradually. There are people in mainstream media who are good people, and they are going to start to see what's going on, and they're going to be trapped and have to make a choice. Everyone is making this choice. Do they speak up and risk their job to deliver truth and follow what they know is right? Or do they keep quiet and carry on earning their paycheck? There's a lot of people in that situation. Now, some of those people will make the choice of the positive path, and they will speak up. So slowly there will be little cracks within the media, and this will be happening across the world at the same time, but it isn't going to happen all overnight. It's going to happen in smaller pockets until it gets to the point where there's so much there's so much of this information that isn't making sense to people, that eventually people start to switch to different forms of media, which has already happened. I expect Simon probably has more information about that than me on a more physical level than just looking at the energy.
Simon?
What do you think, Simon?
To go back to the other point, we are in a third dimensional world, and so therefore what we will experience is both physical and energy. And the way that it expresses itself is with one hospital being empty and one hospital being full. And this is the choice. And what we actually have to be, personally, I think that's everyone here and all of those who you know are aspiring to being spiritual, we have to be very careful that if we don't watch it, we will lose the connection with the 3D. There are a mass of people who are still in the 3D or the gray area, the turning point between one and another. And if we are perceived as being lighter than light with this vision, then they'll say, well, you don't speak for me. You know, you've got your head in the clouds, you're new age. So I think it's very, very important that those of us who want to open the door and show the way have to be able from time to time to walk back into the world of physicality, to be able to show that we still have that connection. And so right across this earth, there will be two options to everything now. That there is no real, from a choice point of view, the day of sitting on the fence is gone.
It's over,
You've got to go one side or the other. And we all know that it's fear that keeps people from moving across. I'll go on to the other one. I posted about 2 days ago a mainstream newspaper from Louisiana, which came out not long after the election, November the 3rd. And its front page was "Election stolen, votes rigged." Now, obviously that was sat on by the mainstream media, but that heartened me because what it showed was that there are people in the mainstream who are actually prepared to do it. And it's my understanding that once the president is resat, the American technical term, then MSM is going to have a lot of light put on it, and also some of the giants within the social media. So I do think that it'll be gradual, in the sense that people in positions of responsibility will gradually turn to what's right, but I think it will be quick when things are imposed. You see, if you impose something on a community, then it means that whatever you've imposed is more likely to be adhered to, but it won't be bought into. That's the difference. So what I think over a period of time is that those people in responsibility will buy into what we're talking about, but in the short term, the public will actually perceive a very physical happening. So, you know, I think that it's incredibly exciting times.
I think those of us who would choose the love over the fear, let's say, because I don't really like categorizing people too much, and say we're spiritual or they're not spiritual. But let's say if you're choosing love from your heart and soul and your mind. I think way back in the early 90s, beginning of the 2000s, there was very much this feeling, well, it's not about if you can't beat them, join them, but you can infiltrate and take over. That's how to, if you want to make a difference and you want to make a difference to the mainstream, then you have to get into it. You have to play the game and then transform it from the within, like we have to do with ourselves, get in within to make that transformation. So I have a lot of faith personally that there are a lot of amazing people out there, and a lot of it comes down to timing, doesn't it? It does. And it's like you can't fell Rome in a day. You can't take this entire thing down in one day. And it does have to be very careful to minimize, I suppose, people's mental health and people's lives getting dismantled. So I think that my personal feeling is that there is always a presence of unconditional love working at the very background of everything, whether we see that or not. And that's what I trust in. And whatever it looks like on the surface, I know it's a fun game and it's like, how do the pieces fit together and what's going to happen next? But it's like you almost can't see it if you have a fixed idea. You know what I mean? It's like we were expecting, for example, you mentioned, the competition, the 3rd of November competition, as Magenta calls it. And we're expecting a resitting. We're expecting our guy to be resat. And I think a lot of people were thinking that we would have seen something visually by now, with all the affidavits that have been signed, all the court cases, all this proof that's come out. It looks like proof to a lot of people. And I think a lot of people were expecting for it not to have got to this point, for it to look different already. And so when people come out and say, well, it hasn't happened yet because, oh, this is now going to happen, it can feel a little bit like a carrot being dangled in front of their faces. It's like it's going to happen, and then you get there and it didn't happen, and then you go, oh no, because now this is happening, and they go, oh, that's okay, this is going to happen. Are you with me, guys? It feels, I think people are getting that feeling, they're having the carrot dangled, and then they're going, well, is it going to happen? What is going to happen? What do you feel about that?
I think that's definitely one for Simon to answer.
Yeah, so do I.
It's like not for me.
From our perspective, and that's from the spiritual community, sometimes when you've got to see how bad something is and you have to show that to the people, you have to allow it to develop. What's occurred now is that everybody who wants to see can see just how corrupted and difficult the situation is. Had action been taken on day one, then we would never have understood the situation with the Supreme Court. We would never have understood the situation with governors in different states. We would never have understood local courts. And the media, who at that time were just deplatforming people, we've now seen a complete change. So what's happened is it's allowed the entire game to be exposed. Now, whether people choose to see one aspect or another doesn't matter. Whatever they choose is right for them. But what had to happen is that choice had to be given. And from a very practical perspective, people who care about a country or care about a people don't particularly want soldiers running around. And if they could achieve what they believe and I believe to be right through a less physical aspect that may take longer, then that has to be the right way forward. So the problem we've got as a spiritual community is that those who are on the transition towards, you know, what we would like them to transition towards, are used to having everything immediately done. So, you know, you go into a supermarket and after 2 weeks they change the color of the packaging because people are bored with it, and they'll say new improved. It's exactly the same thing, but it has a nice bright color packaging. And unfortunately, with the type of technology that's on this planet now and the way that the control system has worked, people are programmed to not have a long attention span and to want something immediately, and then they're bored with it. I mean, that's always been the way. The joke about the you know, the newspaper and the chips, that was yesterday's news. But the reality is that people want action now. They want immediate answers, because when you send a text or an email or a message, you get almost an immediate response, and people want life to be like that. And if you've not been a judge, or you've not been in the military, or you've not been a politician, or you've not been a doctor, you don't know that you think it's going to be immediate. It isn't. And so this is what people have got to do. People have got to be calmer and realize that this was all done to play out. If it hadn't, we wouldn't have this wonderful choice. That's my view.
The other thing,
I just
so
sorry, go for it, Becky. Just that point that you said, Simon, I just thought was absolutely brilliant. The choice had to be given, so that every single human being is empowered, are they not, to then make their own choice. So the choice had to be presented. I think that's super powerful what you've just said.
I don't like to quickly jump in because I know Becky wants to speak, but you see, these choices aren't the choices created by the organizations. It's something much more powerful above them, unseen, that is using their frequency and their energy to strip away all of the cover and to bear it to the human consciousness, the human eyes. And so these bad actors or good actors, not actually aware that they are on a massive stage and they are involved in a play, and the audience is sitting there, and the audience will decide what they want. It doesn't mean that's right or that's wrong. That member of the audience will decide. And if they decide that they are quite happy in the framework that they're in, then that's where they'll be, and it's right for them, but they will get another choice. And we have that critical mass of people, and it's wrong to think that we need billions of people before we advance. The number is relatively small, and that number has been hit. And that's why, you know, Magenta is quite right that bifurcation has already taken place. And that's why, you know, we want catch up, in the sense, you know, we want those people who their heart, their soul wants to do it, but this is holding them back. That's what's holding them back, and you know, that's what the fight at the moment on the earth is for.
Brilliant, thank you. Becky, darling, what were you going to say?
Oh, okay. Well, you moved on a little bit, and I was just thinking, going back to the 21st of December and the Uluru meditation. Simon and I participated in that, and that was another. You know, we heard back, of course, that we had reached a critical mass for you know, amazing connections to be made and unlocked within the earth, and that was all an amazing time. But going back to what Simon was talking about as well, is that, as Simon had explained, you know, a few weeks ago, there are about 6 stages to a plan that the good side have, and there are different options and stages. And at one point, it absolutely looked like they were fixated on a certain plan and a certain stage that was going to happen over Christmas, and that was going to happen. And then there was a meeting just before Christmas which changed that plan, which decided, let's just hold off from, you know, going all in, not guns blazing, but with that sort of phrase, and let's just give the legal side more time. It's doing the logical thing. We've got to proceed with the path of least resistance and you know, first. And that's what happened. And I think a lot of people who were watching and waiting were really mentally and emotionally, you know, and physically geared up for something exciting to happen over Christmas. And you know, something did happen, but it wasn't what people were expecting. And it's because there was a change of plan, and it's got to be very, very carefully managed. And that's something that, you know, that I think, you know, a lot of people do understand.
Definitely. Well, I was actually watching Simon's video. You were doing a video with, I think it was Kerry Cassidy, and you were talking about a speech that would happen on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, and it had to do with declassifications. And we've heard a lot in recent weeks, or maybe even months, I'm not sure, about Assange and Snowden being pardoned. And so I was like, oh my God, it's gonna happen, as Simon said. You know, I'm one of those people. I did, on that piece of information, I was like, yes, and got really excited. And I was saying to my partner, this is gonna happen, this is so gonna happen. And then it didn't happen. And he's like, it didn't happen. You know, it's like, how many things are you gonna tell me are happening? And then they're not. So it's like, yeah, and then of course I caught up with your own videos, and it's like, yeah, the plan changed. And I wonder how you're grinning like that's really funny, and I bet there's people out there going, Simon, it's just not funny.
It is funny.
It is funny.
It is funny. I'll tell you what,
funny.
because the problem with Snowden was that whether you believe the ends justified the means or not, the problem within the system is that he had signed, I'm calling him a him because that's when it occurred, he had signed the Official Secrets Act, the equivalent in America. And to pardon him at this stage, which was the plan, there were too many generals, whatever you want to call them, too many admirals who couldn't abide that. They couldn't go for it. And we've seen something like 20 odd people pardoned in the last 2 weeks now. Snowden is on the list to be pardoned. And the reason that he wasn't within that group that were being pardoned was simply because I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just telling you that the men and women at the very highest of the American military couldn't stomach it at that point. Not because what he was doing was right or wrong, but because physically in a 3D world, he had signed his signature to a piece of paper saying, I won't release information, because that's what you do under the Secrets Act. So that's why Snowden didn't get it. And Trump did not appreciate the kickback that he was going to get from military at that level. So, you know, Trump gets resat, Snowden will be pardoned, no question of that. Okay.
Because doesn't it work in their favor for information to come out now? Doesn't it work in all our favors for that information to come out? So wouldn't it make sense to pardon him, even for those military that can't stomach it? No, Magenta, what do you think?
Well, like Becky was saying, that Simon had spoken about a plan and how it's got 6 stages. What I've been shown is it's like a tree with branches, and one fork will be taken, and then there opens up a whole load of new options. So it isn't a plan that's laid out like a blueprint that you're going to follow A, B, C, and D. It's a living plan that changes in the moment. And at the same time, as Simon is saying, there is a higher energy here, presenting opportunity to the people of Earth. We are being given opportunities to learn patience. If we want everything to happen now, we are not being taught, we're not learning patience. It's important to cultivate patience, because patience is a skill that will assist you with your ascension. If you want to ascend right now and speed off, you will burn out. So you have to have patience, which is the same thing as temperance. And Tara, you mentioned timing. We're being taught about timing and how to be part of that, how to be sovereign in this unfolding plan. This isn't just a plan created by the white hats or by the military or by Trump. This is our plan. And from an individual level, it's a personal plan. We are the ones that are living it, which is why I say there's such a spiritual part of this. We're being taught about resistance. So if you want something to happen, if someone says this is likely to happen in these 3 days, or this will happen in these 3 days and it doesn't, if that person is getting very disappointed and angry with that person and saying, oh, you've said things that would come true and they haven't, this, I feel, is a misinterpretation, because anyone who's out there presenting potential parts of this plan or predictions is not going to say, on this date, this is going to happen without doubt at this particular time. Nobody is saying that. Everyone, regardless of the level that they're teaching at, if they have any spirituality whatsoever, they are going to explain the multidimensionality, the choices, the fact that things change, that this is a living plan. We're living in the moment, involving huge, huge numbers of people. And for people to get annoyed, I've had people say to me, so much of what the 9 have said, Magenta, so much of what you've said has not come true. So this proves that your predictions are not worth listening to. And I read this comment and I'm baffled, because I go away and think, what is it that the 9 have actually said, that I have publicly said, that hasn't come true? And I can't think of a single thing. So it's a difference in perspective. I'm not saying that everything that I've predicted has come true. What I'm saying is that I have been teaching about the multidimensionality, and you're looking at energy, you're looking at possibility. Even if you have information, physical, tangible information like Simon, he's still saying, if you listen to him, this is likely to happen. But what could also happen is this or this. And he will give several options, because no one knows what's actually going to happen until it happens. But what I do know is that Mr. T, or Trump, whatever we want to say, call him in this coded chat, will he be reseated? Absolutely. I will give a guarantee on that. But will it look like what you are thinking it will look like? Very likely not, because we're also being told about how energy is presented and about interpretation of that, as Simon said earlier. There are many ways this could occur. Now, number one, it may be that there isn't actually a president. I think this is unlikely now. It's very likely in the future that the whole system will change, which is why this has had to happen, because the political system is going to change. The way that we have government is going to change across the world, because it's been ruled by a dark, nefarious structure with their intention as control. And it's now changing to be ruled by genuine people with their intentions for freedom. But will Mr. T be placed again in some form? I feel it will be a presidential form, yes. But what the 9 have said to me over the Christmas period, this will happen at the 11th hour. I wasn't 100% sure of what the 11th hour meant. I looked it up. It means right at the last minute. So please, everyone, continue to hold the knowing and the faith, and the slightest thing that goes wrong. I've had people say to me, well, this has happened now, so there's no way, it's absolutely done, it's over. There's no way Trump will get in, Biden has won. That's it. Because of this, and this. And what they're explaining to me, I don't have a clue about, because I don't understand the American political movement. All I know is what I see. And I will tell you now that synchronicity is going to be playing a huge role in this. Things are going to happen that no one knows about, that haven't even happened yet. People are going to pop up that no one has even heard of. So if you are making a decision that this can't possibly happen based on A, B, C, and D, that's because you do not have the full picture. You do not have all the information, because it's happening in real time. That's the truth of the situation.
Brilliant, totally brilliant, Magenta. And you're right, we live in a fractal quantum reality. And every single one of us is impacting everything that happens at any one particular time constantly. And I think it's really important for people to remember this, that we are all active participants in everything that's playing out. And depending on what seat in the theatre you are in, you will see it from a different perspective as well. And also for anyone, and I love that, you know, I used that example with Simon. And of course, I didn't go away going, well, Simon said this is going to happen, and then it didn't, so therefore Simon's rubbish. But because, I mean, that's possible though, right? That's possible that some people might think that way, or like people that have made those comments to you, Magenta. But in that respect, it's like, that right there again is a reflection back to self. Where is your empowerment in that? Are you coming from a place of fear, really? Because you need to have these constant affirmations that this is happening and this is happening, and almost be pacified, almost be fed like a baby, this is happening and this is happening, so that you go, oh, okay, I'm all right now. You know, everything's being taken care of. I'm being taken care of. The leaders and the saviors are taking care of everything. Therefore, I'm not going to be in fear. I'm going to be in love and trust. And the moment that that's taken away and you're going, well, what is happening? That you go back into that fear and that anxiety again. I think it's really important for people to recognize that about where their own energy is at. Are you really in the love energy and in the trust and in the surrender, or are you actually in the fear, but you hadn't realized it because you've been living off these morsels of information, so to speak? And we can't put that on somebody. Well, we can try and put it on somebody else, but it's always going to bounce right back to ourselves. And you know, these situations will escalate. And if you're one of these people, you know, I'm saying this with compassion, because it could be, you know, so many people this is impacting. And if you're one of those people that's going, I need to know what's going on, I'll just invite you just to breathe and go, this is about you coming into your sovereignty, like Magenta used that word sovereignty. I think you did as well, Simon, coming into your sovereignty, coming into your power, and understanding that you play a crucial role, and to align your own energy and focus on what you want to focus on, right? Focus on what outcome we all want, which is peace and love and unity and a non-separation. So coming back to that falling into the gap, if we can get in a panic about that, then that's only going to split our own psyche for a start. You're going to go a bit mad going, is that true? Isn't that true? And the split, the chasm happens between the hemispheres of your mind, and you lose your shit. You will not see things clearly at all. So if we can actually focus thing, like you said, Magenta, you're so right. It does happen. It does change constantly. It's a living, breathing fractal, this reality. Bifurcating in this way and that way and this, or no, you know, not even bifurcating, multiplicating in all different directions. But it's like, what do we want at our core? And can we hold that?
I love that, Tara. And it reminds me of like an infinity symbol, you know, like this, with a human being at the center of that. And they're, you know, on one side, doesn't matter whether it's left or right, their internal world, and on the other side, their external world. And so it's just like the internal world and the external world of every individual is, you know, it's intrinsically connected. You can't escape it. And for people who are, you know, wanting the next installment and then sort of, you know, being disappointed if it hasn't turned out exactly as their interpretation of what they heard, and then they sort of apportion blame, you know, that's just them expressing themselves and where they are. But if you start to focus on your internal world and balance that, you know, with the external world, start doing the internal work as well as just trying to see what's going on, and understand that the two are intrinsically connected. It's so important to do that. I'm just going to give everyone a visual, because my friend bought me this for Christmas, and it's the infinity sign with the heart in the middle, intrinsically linked between the two. So it's funny you should say that symbol, because that little heart is every single one of our little hearts, caught between the infinite and the finite, caught between one, you know, physical reality and etheric reality. That's all of us right there. It's a bit like our connecting consciousness symbol as well, with the, you know, the world with the heart in the middle, and then the infinity sign going from the other. So yeah, it's so important. It is a symbol of the here and now. It is a symbol of our life here and now on this planet, and the work that's happening.
It's beautiful. So whilst we're on the subject of Mr. T, can I bring up another thing to do with the Maxines, as Magenta calls them, to do with the things in the arm? Because, and actually, I'm going to be honest with you, this confuses me. So I would love to hear what you guys say. Or not confuses is too strong a word, but I'm going, what's all that about? What's the deal? In the biggest company that begins with F, that creates these injections, has been paid, has been given the money by Mr. T to create these so-called safe things that people are taking. And to a lot of us, we feel that that company beginning with F, they're not safe at all. And so we have this person who, you know, we love and we look up to, and he's doing all these great things, and yet he's absolutely backing 100% and really going on about what a great job he's doing to give everybody these safe injections. And people are really scared because their family members, their parents are literally, and people close to me and my family are literally going to stay in their houses and not come out until they get it, because they're that scared. And people are concerned, like, this is somebody's mother, this is somebody's auntie, you know. And the guy that we're rooting for is actually condoning, they're not condoning it, he's subsidized, he's paid for the whole thing to happen. What's going on there? Can you shed some light on that? I can feel a lot of people behind us actually in watching who are going, I can't actually, I've got a little bit of trouble. I keep trying to look up and see the live feed for us, and I can see a static picture of us, but I am getting people's comments, and it's really lovely. We've got loads and hundreds and hundreds of people watching, so thanks for being here, guys, and also thanks for your comments. But yeah, I think there's a lot of people going, yeah, what is that about?
Do you want me to respond to that?
Whoever feels like it, yeah.
Okay, so I've spoken about this before. I'll try and go into a bit more detail. The most important thing, and I think Simon said this in a couple of his recent podcasts, and I absolutely agree with him completely. The most important thing is getting Mr. T reseated, whatever it takes. Because if we don't, and that's not a reality, but if we don't, then everything blows up and this little Maxine will be nothing compared to what is coming. So we get him reseated first. If he doesn't play the game, the Maxine game, he's out. He's got to do it. If we were in that position, we would have to do the same thing, even though we know we are perpetuating something that's not good for people. It's the same with the environment. He makes these environmental decisions that's not necessarily great for the environment overall. All this comes later. We need to get him in. If he starts saying now there's no need for a Maxine because this whole pathogen is not as harmful as people are saying and the numbers are skewed, etc., etc., there are large numbers of people that will turn against him. There are many people following him that are still hovering between the mainstream view and somewhat of an alternative view. He has got to push the Maxine. There's more to it than that as well. What I have been shown is as the Maxine is rolled out, what's actually occurring, and this is coming in from the dark structure, in the Maxines, there's around, it's hard to give a percentage, but roughly 70% of those Maxines are empty, placebo, harmless, and around 30% is actually the real Maxine. This is because if everyone starts getting side effects straight away, the whole thing is going to fall apart. And there are many people taking a step back, wanting to wait and see how this affects everyone else before they take it. So some of these are placebo. Mr. T is aware of this plan, and I'm told by the 9, this goes deeper than they will even tell me, because any information that I can give publicly is out there for the dark structure to see. So there's things I am not told. What I am shown is the Maxine program is extremely complex, and there are so many things going on behind the scenes Mr. T is doing everything he can to appear to play the game and at the same time protect the people as much as he possibly can, to the point where he may try his best to push vaccines that are not harmful and that are genuinely just antibodies. But there's all these different groups involved. There's so many people who have their fingers in the vaccine pie, but he's just one man. He's got a team behind him, but they can't work miracles. So at the same time, we're being given a choice. This is the bifurcation. And one of these huge choices is the vaccine. Do we move into fear? Do we allow ourselves to be manipulated and bribed? You cannot see your father who's in a care home unless you take the vaccine. You cannot continue to work in your job unless you take the vaccine. You cannot fly off on holiday unless you take the vaccine. Are you going to stand up in your sovereignty and stand strong against such tyranny? Or are you going to cower and allow yourself to be bribed and manipulated? This is another part of our lessons as sovereign beings. So there's a multifaceted, multidimensional energy at play with the vaccine. It's not just as simple as, why is Mr. T funding it? Is he bad? Is he good? It's complex. And as I said, I don't even know the full picture because there are things that I wouldn't be allowed to say. So that's my answer on that one.
Thank you, Magenta. Thank you so much. Yeah, there's a lot of people on the live here saying they're super grateful for this question and wanting to hear what you guys have to say about it.
Okay, well, the company is famous for making Viagra. So they've got a lot of money for many years, and they are a very powerful institution within nearly every Western and non-Western world. When the top man did a financial deal with that company, he actually gave them money to run to research that was coming from a military background. And some of the audience might be really astute and might remember there was a big hoo-ha and Trump was claiming that a certain amount of money had gone through, and that company said, no, that wasn't money for this, that was money for something else. And there was a lot of embarrassment, because basically what's happened is that the medication coming from that particular company would be more interesting than, say, Moderna. That's the first thing I'm going to say to you. So basically, and I've done my podcast, and I've said, look, if I had to have one, this is the one I would go for, because I know that the research has come through the American military. But you can't, in a civilian world, produce a medicine from the military and then sell that to the public. It doesn't work like that. What you have to do is you have to have a civilian company that sells to the medical world. But that doesn't mean that that research comes from that company. That research can come from somewhere else. Now, that's fairly straightforward and a very 3D thing. What I'm going to talk about now is much more up our street and more challenging. And a lot of people are going to have it difficult. We're not responsible for other people. If someone's under 18 or 21, the law says we're responsible for that individual. But as much as it's difficult for my mother, my brother, my sister, that they're here, they're there, we are not responsible. And there's a thing where Jesus was walking with his disciples, and there was a guy sitting, and he recognized Jesus, and he said, Master, can I be with you and follow you? And Jesus said, yes, you're a good man, you can. And he said, well, can you just hold on, because my father died yesterday. If you just hold on, we'll get him buried, and I'll come with you. And Jesus said, let the dead bury the dead, which lost him more friends and made him lots of enemies, because people didn't understand what he was saying. And the point is that everybody must make his or her choice, and they won't thank you for trying to, argue with them or push them. All we can do is give them an alternative view. We can show them what we believe in, but we can't try and force them. Now, Trump has said that there'll be no forced vaccinations. So under him, there will be no forced vaccinations. You won't have to have one to fly on an airplane. You won't have to have one to work in a job. But if he wasn't there, I can absolutely assure you that no one would be able to get on an airplane anywhere in the world without one.
I think the British government said the same thing, didn't they? That went through Parliament and they said the same thing.
Yes, in Britain, it's a voluntary vaccination.
So when you brought up that quote, "Let the dead bury the dead," that wasn't a reference to, I mean, I just know people are going to pick up on that. Would you clarify that? Do you mean literally people burying their dead? Or
No, what he was, because it's all, you know, it's a parable. What he was saying was, somebody who you don't have responsibility for, let go of them. You know, you don't have responsibility. And as difficult as, and we get in Connecting Consciousness, we get an awful lot of people saying, you know, can I have a session for my sister or my brother? And
I understand completely.
Say, but has that person actually asked? No, they haven't asked for it. I just want to organize it. And I said, you can't do that. You can't do that. And it's a part of that letting go process, because an individual will make the decision that's right for him or her. May not seem right to you, but it's right for them. And it's part of the process of letting go and trusting that everything that happens will happen correctly.
And also that everybody is entitled to their choice. Like you said, the choice is being given to every single person. So just for clarity, everyone, Simon did not say that people who have the injection will be dying and then having to bury their own dead. He's not saying that.
Oh Lord, I mean, literally, if anybody, I mean, thank you, Tara. I mean, you know, it's great, but I mean, if anybody was to think that, then I would seriously have to shake my head. I mean,
you never know. I'm just saying, I heard that and I went, hold on.
I mean, you know, Becky and I got some information on Christmas Eve, which I only shared with her and one other person, and it was fairly generic. And I was going actually to go out and do the show and alert this, and Becky said to me, the people won't be ready for it. And I sat back and I thought, actually, you're right, they won't be ready for it. And this is this is what I was saying earlier, that we must make sure that the gap that creates between individuals isn't so big that we can't bridge that gap. And the reality is that when people are stuck in a paradigm, their choices, they think they're making free choices, they're not, because their own mind is skewing those choices. And I want to live in a world as you do, where we can just put everything on the table and nobody's going to blame X, Y, or Z. They'll just say, oh, that's interesting, that's interesting, that's interesting, rather than, well, I don't agree with that, so you're saying that, so I don't agree with you. Oh, I like that, you said that on Monday, and I really like you, and on Wednesday you say something, or I don't like you anymore. That is what
totally hear that. Yeah.
That's what we deal with all the time. And also people who just misunderstand, you know, they hear something that's not there, and we get that with people who you genuinely think would understand, you know, people who you might think are of friends or close associates, and some people just are seeing things from their point of view in a you know, from their facet, really, on a gem or something. They just are not seeing it in how the information's presented. Everyone's seeing things either from rose tinted glasses or, you know, the opposites. So but as Simon said, you know, sometimes people are, or often people blame that the giver of information, you know, and it shouldn't be that way, really, because it's just information.
I have a really funny example of that. Recently I spoke in an interview, and we were talking about cats and dogs, and I said how cats are basically have a paw in each dimension, whereas dogs are more sort of in the 3D world and show us their unconditional love. And I was likening that example to my cat and my dog. Someone wrote a comment saying, I've followed Magenta for years. I'm now going to stop following her because she is telling everyone that her cat is multidimensional. And he was just didn't like that comment because I was telling everyone that I've got a magical cat. But what I actually said was all cats anyone who owns a cat will know what I mean. They live in more than one reality, and they're very good
Sounds
at
like MSM, doesn't it?
realities. So that's
It sounds like the MSM and what they do to the. Gosh,
No, I thought what Becky said was really good there. You think of a jewel that's been cut into different facets. If you're able to look at the whole jewel, you see all of the story. But if you're just stuck in that one facet, and that's the way you are with it. Actually, I think cats are magical. Okay? And we have magical cats. So if you get lots of
well, I have a magical unicorn, so no, you're completely right. Actually, I completely love your analogy of the gem as well. I see it a lot the same way, Becky. I think we have a lot of things that we see the same. So talking about things coming out into. But hold on, before I do that, Simon, you said that the medical company beginning with F has a more interesting substance to it, and you would prefer that one. Would you care to just enlighten us a little bit on that one? Interesting in what way?
I said if I had to have one. I mean,
Yes.
I'm on record as saying I don't want one, and I've
Of course, yeah.
But if I had to have one, then that's the one I would take, simply because I've had some privy knowledge of how it's reached, where it's reached, its trajectory, how it's been worked up, and I know that the people who've worked on it, I don't know them personally, but I know that worked on it have not come from the traditional medical civilian background. They've come from military laboratories.
But isn't that the one that has, the RNA altering and dead fetuses?
Does anybody think that the Vice President, Mike Pence, would have had anything, because he's had it alive, would he have actually had anything that would have been bad? Either he's had a placebo or he's had the good one. Let's put it like that.
So there's a good one.
President Trump has said he's not having it at the moment. Doesn't that send a message? Because Magenta's absolutely right when she says, in her own words, look between the writing. And Trump's saying, I'm not having mine yet. Oh no, what does that tell us?
Well, some people might interpret it as saying, well, that's because you know what's in it, and of course you're not going to have it, because there were labels going around of the packaging, and then people looked into the packaging.
The reason that he hasn't taken it is because if he did, the first thing everyone would say to him is, which one did you have? And that then destroys the credibility of the other one. And that's the whole reason he's not doing it. Which one did you have? Oh, why did you have that one? Okay.
And also, he's been told that he may still have antibodies from having coronavirus. So he's letting us know that the vaccine is not the only answer. If you've had this, you may well have antibodies, and that hasn't been studied enough yet. And it's highly likely that you could be immune for life from this if you've had it. I don't know whether the medical professionals are saying that, but I see energetically that there are people on this earth that are immune from it. And in many places, herd immunity has already been reached. So we're not being given the whole picture.
And is it also possible that in much the same way as we're having to kind of go down the sort of mechanical, I suppose, logical, legal route that's happening with the competition, that's happening with the reseating, where everything's having to come out slowly and acts have to have happened before you can say, hold on a minute, that's not okay, that's not legal, that's not allowed. Do you see what I mean? Like an act has to have actually happened for then the agenda to be exposed underneath, let's say, rather than if it's only in theory, or if it's only being said it's going to happen, that we have to wait for things to actually happen before we can say, okay, that's a crime. Are you with me? Is that the same? Is that the same with the injections?
I'm a bit lost.
Am I being too vague? Sorry.
What I would say is, if if you're trying to keep something from the dark structure, then that wouldn't be released for them to have information about the plan of light, if you will. You have to, the plan of light is so multidimensional that this is why information is not released until certain things have happened. It's not that the thing has actually happened, it's when it gets to a certain point where if that information got out, it doesn't make any difference. So there's, if that's what you mean, yes, you can't release information publicly that's going to give your opponent, if you will, an advantage. So there are certain things that you wouldn't say, but I think you'd have to clarify your question to look further at that.
Thanks, Magenta. I think you did cover it, but what I'm saying is there are, for instance, with the competition and with the potential fraud, some people will say there is fraud and some people will say there isn't. So I'm saying potential. But if there is fraud, then it has to be proven first. It has to be go the whole line, if you like. All the acts have to have taken place. The seating has to have happened for then it to be exposed as a fraud, if it is a fraud. Do you see what I'm saying? And is that the same thing when it comes to the injections? Like we can look at them and say, okay, that's an illegal perhaps ingredient. That's a harmful act that you're about to take out on humanity. If there's microchips or whatever, you can say, whilst they're about to do it, you can say that's a harmful act, that's not allowed, and some people will believe it and some people won't. But once it's actually happened, then you have the proof, then the act is committed, then you can actually bring back justice. Is it like this?
That's the case, but only in 3D. Those who are aware will learn these things beforehand so that they can make the choice, whether it's about Mr. T and potential fraud, if we must say that. I think those that know, they're learning about that beforehand. For example, with me, personally, in my personal experience, I learned about the potential fraud before the competition even took place, as many psychics will have done. So it's, you know, if you're multidimensionally connected to all these different realms, you will know these things beforehand. For those who didn't and are living in the third dimension, then for them, these truths potentially will come out afterwards, which is why I said earlier, some people will choose the negative path, if you will, which involves Maxine as one aspect to that. And then later they discover they were duped, they discover they were hijacked and misled, and they swap and make a choice to move to the positive path, and they will need rehabilitation and healing. And I'm not saying that you can heal yourself from this Maxine, which is another information that's being put out in the sort of new agey community, saying that you can fully detox from the damage. And my information is that you can detox from some of the ingredients, but you cannot reverse the RNA issue, is the information I have. But I understand what you're saying now. And yes, it's both, depending on...
Exactly. And can the people that have created this piece of engineering that does such DNA damage or RNA damage, can they then, once this atrocity has happened and people have got proof, if you like, that it's hurting them, it's done this damage, then I suppose they're liable. Whereas before they're doing it, it's only an intention to do harm rather than actually having committed. And is that part of the takedown, or is there something we can't speak about?
Yes, if it gets that far, there are many pathways. It may not even get to that stage because the Maxine program is going to fall apart. This bifurcation is actually two realities. And for those that have chosen the positive bifurcation, this may not even occur for them at all in their reality. We are all experiencing different realities, but perhaps someone else could answer that in a different way to me.
Simon's inundated with animals. He's
Yeah.
got magical creatures.
Right. We have a lot of respect for you, and we don't want you to be, you know, deplatformed or anything else like that. I think it's not about evidence. It's presented in a way that individuals who've made certain choices are connected to and how they understand it. So for years, you know, I've said that unless a man in a shirt and a tie with the 9 o'clock news written behind him, unless he says it, vast majority of people are not going to believe it. So it's one thing to have evidence of anything, whatever that might be, but it doesn't mean anything unless it's presented in a way that the individuals on this planet who have booked into or bought into a particular frame will understand. So what Magenta's saying is that if you have already bought into or you've connected to this alternative view, then you don't need a court case. You don't need 10,000, that's 50, what was it, Becky, 52,428 affidavits, and that was last week, 52,428. But of course, the structures on this planet are that, you know, and it doesn't matter whether you get a parking ticket or whether it's alleged voter election fraud. It has a process to go through. And so once the guy is resat, then I think that information will be presented in a way that A, the system works with and understands, and B, those millions and millions of people who only are connected to the process, the system, they will understand it. But that's when this split will occur. That's when there should be a massive disconnect between these millions of people and the official system that they, since they were born, have followed, and their parents before them. That is the fantastic opportunity for all of us around this table and elsewhere to jump into what is a vacuum, to get in there quickly before some other bad actor gets in there and tries to steal it. So there's going to be a huge, I'm not an expert, but there's the stages when somebody goes through, isn't it? Shock, loss, all the rest of it. The humanity is going to go through this process, and we have got to be there to be able to not comfort people, but to be able to show them that this is meant to happen and to get on with life, but this time never go back into the trap that we all originally fell into. So that's why it's exciting, but only if we act as a community, as a group, not as individuals, because we're not competing with each other. We should be working together, because we're talking about millions of people who are suddenly going to say, what do I believe? What the hell do I believe now? Has my life all been for nothing? And we need to get in there very quickly. So yeah, it's going to play out, and we're going to be kept very, very busy.
You mean the grief cycle, Simon? And talking of, well, you know, connecting consciousness is, you know, you created that for this reason as a big sort of support group. And at the beginning of 2019, we had 6,500 people, members, and just at the end of 2020, we've it's increased by 300%. We've got over 26,000 members now in Connecting Consciousness. About 10,000 of those just joined in the last couple of months. So
Congratulations.
that in itself shows that there is a need for a support structure where people who are awake and aware, and people who have started looking into this and are absolutely going through these phases. I mean, we've got the platform MeWe Pro CC, and a few thousand, not all the members, but a few thousand members are on there and active. And we absolutely see people in all the different phases of the grief cycle, you know, shock, anger, grief, apathy, sense of loss. There's a whole thing in the mix. And that is, you know, going back to Magenta, about in, was it March, April, May, Magenta last year, 2020, when you had that really in-depth vision that was about the 3 stages of awakening, the 3 steps of awakening. And I know, Tara, that you've got a sort of a slightly different one about the 4 stages of awakening. But with Magentas, I really, when you were talking about it, Magenta, I really resonated with that, because I could see that on Connecting Consciousness. Within Connecting Consciousness, you can really see clearly the different levels that people are at, and that's absolutely there's no right or wrong. It's not better to be in one level or another, although it might be nicer for the person experiencing things that they have worked through this loss and this grief and this shock and this horror, but it's a process, and you keep going back to it, because each bit of new information that you get can trigger the whole cycle again. But having a support structure around you of people who are aware of the same things and are going through the same things, and are also saying, yes, I can't talk to my family anymore, or they're always telling me I'm wrong, or I'm a conspiracy theorist and I can't relate to them anymore, they can't relate to me, it's very difficult. And then having this support group of people who are going through the same thing, or very similar, it's hugely important at this stage.
I think it's important to note as well that all of us who are out there sort of teaching this stuff, we've all been through it. Yeah. It's not that we escaped it and we were sort of born in this wonderful euphoric space. We've been through it sort of 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, however long it was. We've been through these grief stages in multiple ways. Anyone out there teaching this stuff now will have been taken right in their early years into extremely challenging situations, so that they would learn and process and integrate and be ready when the time came when they were needed. That's what we're talking about when we talk about the plan of light. It's huge. It started thousands of years ago. There's always a match. The minute the dark structure steps in with a nefarious plan, then the light will come in and create the match to that. That's because this is a polarized reality, and that's how it works. So our plan is amazing as well, and it's been there in place for years and years. So we've all been through this, and we all know exactly what it feels like to be in resistance, to get disappointed, to feel like we're being told something and then it doesn't happen, and to go through all the shock when you discover the truth and how much this reality is hijacked. We've been through that, and we've been through dark days and not had anyone, because there were no groups and there was no internet then. We had to go through it all alone, and we might have been lucky to have one person or some kind of support. But we had to go through it in many ways worse, because we didn't have the collective, so that we would be ready now to lead the collective through it. So,
and one of those parts of the grief cycle as well is denial, isn't it? Of course.
Yeah.
Denial that it's happening.
Which is where a lot of people are right now.
And that just calls, because people have been asking, what can we do to help? And I'd love all 4 of us to dive in on that, at the end, in a little while, and let people know how they can help. But right out of the box right here, if somebody's in denial, or somebody is angry, or somebody, any of these, or just on the floor with it, compassion. I would just recommend compassion. And not having that judgment, because it's the judgment that separates us, isn't it?
It really is. And people have to, they have to approach this and come to this in their own time. And everyone has something different that triggers them, that catalyzes the sort of spiritual awakening and event for them. I mean, over the Christmas week, Simon and I were watching a couple of videos. Well, we watched Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol, and we watched It's a Wonderful Life, 2 of our favourite films. And the 2 films have got so many things in common. Obviously Christmas Carol is sort of set in the Victorian times. It's a Wonderful Life was made in 1947, but it's so relevant to now, and this is about the human spiritual journey that we've been dealing with for the last thousands and thousands of years. And interestingly, the sort of negative aspect of it is to do with money and power and hold over and fear. So like in Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol, the main character is Scrooge, and he's a very service to self, miserly fellow. You know, he hates people, he likes to hoard money, and he likes to take money off people and have the power over people. And you know, in It's a Wonderful Life, it's about a really kind service to others person who you know, sees that sort of character within his town and how that character is affecting people and likes to help people. So he's more of a money lender, even though they both have the same sort of job, but Scrooge is hoarding it and this other guy is lending it to try and make people's lives better. But it both are set over Christmas time, and they both have a spiritual crisis. You know, Scrooge has this terrible spiritual crisis. He's visited by the ghost of his ex-partner, and then goes through this transformative journey where he gets visited by the ghosts of Christmas past, present and future, and he gets shown his past life traumas and perhaps poor decisions he made and the error of his ways. He gets to see, you know, the milk of human kindness and what it's like to be part of a loving family, what it's like to be part of a community, what it's like to do good things for others so that people love you, and it's a feel-good feeling. And he'd shut himself off from that decades back in his life, and that created such a huge, you know, spiritual awakening within him that he woke up the next morning, Christmas morning, and he was just so full of the joys of life. He was so excited to be alive and to be given another chance. And that was the start of a wonderful life for Scrooge, being part of a member of his family and his community and so on. In It's Wonderful Life, you know, the main man, like I said, he'd sacrificed his own dreams of the future. He really wanted to travel, he really wanted to get an education, and he wanted to experience life. His dad died in an inopportune time. He had decided, he didn't have to, but he decided to stay back and help people, carry on the role that his good father was doing. And you know, he did that for years, and he got married, had a family, and helping people all around his town to get their own homes, get away from the grip of the nasty, miserly, money-making power man. And then he has a financial crisis, and it happens on Christmas Eve, and he is thrown into the pits of despair and wants to take his own life. And what happens is a wonderful angel called Clarence, you know, so it's always like you know, either fourth or fifth dimensional energy, supernatural energy that comes in that helps facilitate and catalyzes spiritual awakening. And, you know, Clarence the angel shows this guy that all the good that he'd had by wiping him out of existence, showed him what the town was like and how the people were and how awful it was. And then he was just really able to see the huge positive impact that he'd had on people. And, you know, so then he got back into the real world and back into and was able to sort of go back to his wife and family and just be hugely grateful to be alive. Never mind that what perceived to be a terrible financial burden, that actually got solved because everybody loved him, because he'd been helping people for 25 years or so, and so they wanted to help him. And I love those two films because they're timeless in a way. They represent the dilemmas that we all face. You know, are we going to let a fear of lack and loss govern us and dictate our way of living, or are we going to let that go and, you know, trust the love part of things, and, you know, want to help others, which in turn helps yourself, and be part of a community. There's the real choices, and the spiritual, our own personal spiritual journey is all about analyzing where we are within these you know, frames and choices, and where we want to be. And it's all part of a spiritual awakening, you know. And the whole thing as well was catalyzed because I actually had two friends, one 20 years ago and one 10 years ago, over the Christmas week, who committed suicide. And in both cases, you know, we're at a despair and loss where they don't see and understand they fail to understand the impact that they have and the good that they've given to others. And I think it's terribly, terribly sad when people do that, because it means that they've lost their own ability to understand their place within community and how they impact others, you know, on a positive level. And we must never forget that within our own selves. And if we perhaps feel that we are not doing what we want to do, being who we want to be, then let that be the greatest gift to show us how we do want to be and what we want to be doing. And I know you said, Tara, that you know, people are asking, what can I do? I think it's difficult for us to tell them what they can do. It's a personal journey. Do what you want to do. Do what the calling is telling you. If you want to help, you've got the calling. And we can't tell you how to help. It's something that you need to decide for yourself. And you may choose lots of different options and try lots of different things out. Or you may get drawn naturally into a certain way of helping or a certain way of being. But yeah, it's a personal journey for each and every one.
That was super poignant and very touching, Becky. There's a lady here, Marie Brissenden, she said, Becky, you are such a light, so lovely, great stuff. Just really appreciating, and everyone's agreeing with you. Yeah, that's really beautiful. Talking of magical helpers, oh, by the way, when you were talking about people having gone through heavy stuff early on in life and not having the support, I started thinking about David Icke and what he went through. And I recently saw something over the last couple of weeks with his Terry Wogan show, and how he was, and I used to love Terry Wogan, but he was mean to him. And I love David Icke. And in fact, the Icke brothers and perhaps even David Icke himself are going to come on and do a live with me really soon. So I'm excited. I know, I'm really excited about that, because I've grown up with this my whole life.
I watched that evening, and I remember that I was quite young. I'm not sure how young, but I think I was a teenager. And I remember feeling really sorry for him. I really resonated and connected with him. I believe he was in like turquoise. He's all in turquoise.
He was in a shell suit.
Turquoise shell suit. And I remember thinking I'd never seen anyone like him, but I was fascinated. And when people were laughing at him, I just, you know, I got really, really upset and angry. And I just thought, no, he's right. I understand what he's saying. And why can't people do that? And I just thought that's kind of the beginning of the end, where you think, what is it with people sometimes?
I know. Well, he was a brave guy, and I have full respect for him. And also, my whole life has been brought up like this. My dad was reading me Edgar Cayce prophecies, you know, when I'm 5 years old and 4 years old. I remember I had measles. I was 4 years old, and he's reading me an Edgar Cayce prophecy about how the lion will lie with the lamb, will have 1,000 years of peace, and all these wonderful things. And he was always, you know, sharing information to expose what was going on the deeper, darker levels that a lot of people, mainstream people, would just say was complete nonsense. I grew up in that entire environment, so I've always been the kind of the black, I wasn't the black sheep of my family, because we were all black sheep, but it was like, you know, the weirdo in society. And now it feels like, you know, I'm a weirdo surrounded by other weirdos, and it's completely normal. So, but yeah, it is tough, and that's why we build this expertise. And it doesn't mean that things don't throw us. Boxing Day, a personal issue, really threw me, and I had to let go more and just go, no, this is part of the great surrender. This is part of letting go of everything that I think I'm holding on to, like it has to be this way, and I want it to be this way, and this is my security. I have to let all of that go. Luckily, I've decades of experience working with that, and that's exactly why we have this I Love You Me community, much like Connecting Consciousness, where people can gather and also practice the I Love You Me, the self-love conversation method to help you through these griefs, to help you through the denial, to help you through that anger, to help you through that not taking responsibility for other people where it's not due, and fully owning your own responsibility. So that whole method gives you the tools to do exactly that. So I just wanted to quickly throw that in. But guys, coming up to, you know, what your topics of expertise really, I would say, in magical helpers, that always appear in every good story. They're always there to help the hero. And recently it came out on, I think it was the Daily Mail, from the Israeli former space security guy, that President T is getting help from the Pleiadians. And I just thought that was absolutely brilliant. And I also question, okay, so we know this. Magenta and I have had conversations where we talked about these things before. And but it is coming out, or it has come out into mainstream media, and there's been other things coming out. He signed a bill a few days ago saying that any information on ETs would be available, would be unclassified, so to speak, or at least to certain people in the government, if not to mainstream. If that's not an acknowledgement, and the Pope also acknowledging that these aliens are our brothers and sisters and are amongst us. I mean, it's out there now. And, you know, again, this is another area of manipulation, isn't it? Of how much disclosure, how much to share, how to manipulate that, what's true and what isn't true. But what's your feeling, like real genuine feeling or knowledge that you have about these other beings who are here with us, and how, in what way do you think that they are helping?
Simon, it's a very good one for you.
All right.
Reluctantly.
I said that President Trump's soul is 50% Palladian and 50% Andromedan. And I fell out of favor with the Labour Party when I was saying that, you know, that even Russia was receiving help from, you know, beneficial ETs after a long period of being stuck in negativity. We had, you know, visits, Becky and I, from somebody who'd had a meeting with Putin, and then we had some months later a meeting with someone who'd, you know, had a meeting with the guy that we don't seem to want to mention, though. I unfortunately said his name once. You might want to go and blank it out.
No, I'm not bothered that much. Don't worry.
You know, information of a non-human, it's actually things that have been rediscovered. You know, everything that we find has already been invented and lost, and then rediscovered and lost and rediscovered. But basically, the United States and Russia have technologies now which, you know, can revolutionize this planet. And I know that in the next 4 years, there will be technologies released which will absolutely transform the way that business is done. Now, this is the key. There's the way that business is done on this planet, and he is receiving assistance from it's not just Palladians, but it's predominantly Palladians. And, you know, where do we think the quantum computer came from? Where do we think this computer that processes faster than that goes too light or just under light? You know, that hasn't been created here. That was a piece of technology gifted to certain people so that they could predict what the bad guys were going to do. And this is a jigsaw puzzle which is nearly complete. And I hope that everyone in the years ahead is up for learning the full truth. And I hope that those people who hold those truth cards in their hands will be prepared to let them go. It's rather like when we create a spiritual community, and then those individuals who are part of that spiritual community suddenly grow and flower, and it's time to let them go. The real sign of a spiritually advanced being is when he or she can let those people go and not say, oh, I'm going to lose my organization. You know, it's all about numbers. I want to grow. And at the moment it is about numbers. But the point is, some time is going to come when all these people in all these different groups throughout the world will actually not need them anymore, because they will be sovereign, and they won't need the likes of Becky or me or anyone else.
The whole point, isn't it?
Hopefully we'll keep friends with them. But what I mean is that the need for what we've created when we move into the fifth dimension won't be required. We'll have some other role. I'm sure I'll go for a vacation, and I'm sure you will as well. The point is that everyone has got a role to play, and we shouldn't be surprised that off-planet humans who have a deep connection to the concept of humanity are getting involved, because they're not prepared to see this wonderful beauty destroyed or controlled or thrown away. And so, yes, there are, and I mean, I don't know if anybody caught the interview that Trump did some 3, 4, 5 months ago, where he was asked about, not about Area 51 so much, but about Roswell. And
son, is that the one with his son on Father's Day?
And he said, yes, and he said to him, are you prepared to talk about, Roswell? And the man said, well, I'm not sure, but he said, there are an awful lot of people that know a great deal, some very interesting things. So, he's trying to tell people we're not the only intelligence around.
Well, it's out on the Daily Mail now.
Yippee.
Do you have anything thoughts on that, Magenta?
Yeah, I think Trump has given them 180 days to provide all the information. But yes, of course, they're helping us on multi-levels. They will step back and allow humanity to progress to a certain point. We have progressed to that point now. We have reached critical mass, where that critical mass is able to connect with those beings in various ways. So they are helping behind the scenes in multiple ways without interfering. This is the positive group. Obviously, there's been negative influence coming in from extraterrestrial groups on the other side for a long time, and they have sort of stepped across or stepped over our free will. I would agree also that Trump is extremely Pleiadian on a soul level, and the Pleiades energy is extremely connected with us all at this point, probably more so than many of the other frequencies. But again, this is a multi-leveled subject that you could talk about for an entire show, and you still wouldn't even have scratched the surface.
No, shows and shows. Do you think we're going to see them in 2021? Is kind of where I'm driving for this. There's disclosure, and apparently the Pleiadians said to this, I can't remember the guy's name, the former chief of security, space security of 30 years. He told him that they were not going to reveal themselves. The Pleiadians were not going to reveal themselves because humans weren't conscious enough. We weren't evolved enough, I think, were the words. And they were waiting for us to evolve more. And yet I know some of us, people here are saying, yes, they look up into the sky a lot and they're like, when are you coming? Are we going to see you? And some people really believe we will see them. And now we've got this media disclosure. Do you think we're going to see them this year, 2021?
Well, it's exactly the same as every other question. Do we take the vaccine? Are we? How do we know Mr. T is going to be reseated? Those that are in connection don't need to see them. They don't need the evidence of the fraud. They don't need it. They're already in connection. So they're already here. The Pleiadians have already shown themselves. Those that are connected with them don't need to see them. They don't need, and they're the ones that will see them, if you will. Those that don't need to see them for proof are the ones that will connect with them. This is about resistance. If you are in a place where, why haven't the ETs shown themselves to me yet? I've been waiting and waiting and waiting. You are creating a huge block to seeing them. So are we going to see them on a huge scale, globally, on TV in 2021? No, I would say no. Are we going to hear about them in the mainstream, in areas? Absolutely. And is that going to increase more and more and more? Yes. And are people going to wake up to this? Yes. May Trump discuss this? Quite likely, once he's reseated. So this disclosure is really ramping up, but it isn't going to be a case where you turn on the television and there's a bunch of Pleiadians there saying, here we are, because they can have that at any time. And they're right when they say about humanity. Humanity as a whole isn't ready. We're at critical mass with those who are, and they're the ones that are holding that higher energy for that. But, you know, we can connect with these beings anytime we want. And obviously all of us here are doing that. And anyone probably watching this and listening to us are doing that too. While I'm speaking, I'd just like to say, Becky, I loved what you said about the films, likening the films to the human journey. It was so beautiful how you explained that. Really was. And also I'd like to say, Tara, you asked how could people, you know, what can they do to help themselves? Well, I would say check out Tara's I Love You Me group. Check out Connecting Consciousness. Join one of these groups. Even if you feel as though you're not a group type of person, you can write to Becky privately. You can write to Tara privately and say, look, I'm really scared about joining a group. I'm not a group person, but I need support. And they will help you to find that support without putting yourself out there. There's a way that you can be part of the group without having your fears pushed and tested. I've got books out there that will help. The first one, Masters of the Matrix, is specific to assisting people to work with that trauma. I know, Tara, you have as well. And you did an amazing interview a few months ago at Camelot Castle.
We were there at the same time, weren't we, guys?
You were all there at the same time. Absolutely. It was such a great party energetically. And Tara, you really went into depth about I Love You Me. I didn't really know that much about the I Love You Me template until I saw that interview. And I thought, wow, you know, this is divinely inspired. We're all getting the same information. And what Simon says is so, so important. We are not here to collect an audience, to market a book, to get subscribers on the video, as some people think, or to get money, as some people think, or to further our career and get famous. Many a time, I would love to say to people, you don't need me anymore. It's not time yet, but there will come a time, as Simon said, when we are not needed, and that will be when we have done our job and we have completed our mission. It's about guiding people through so that they can stand in the sovereignty and they don't need a leader. In many ways, we are there in certain areas. There are many people who are at that place now, but there's still a while to go yet.
Thank you, Magenta. Such a wise woman.
I just wanted to add about, you know, the Pleiadians. Human beings are multidimensional creatures. You know, our DNA and our bodies, we're here physically in the 3D. You know, our bodies are made up of not just a physical body, but an emotional body, the mental body, and the spiritual body. And this, you know, these all are connected actually to different dimensions and different energy levels and layers. Pleiadians are sort of classically at the moment known to be sort of fifth dimensional, upper fifth dimensional. People can communicate with them telepathically, but also very much on a heart level, because our hearts are very fifth dimensional within themselves. Our hearts are very multi-dimensional and higher dimensional parts of our body, the heart center. And also Pleiadians, some are here incarnated. I mean, I know lots are, like the souls are, but there are very few physical Pleiadians here, you know, in a 3D, but they can't hold that energy very long. They have to go back to fifth dimensional. So it's not practical to expect Pleiadians en masse to expose themselves to us humans en masse. It's going to be part of a private and personal journey, and human beings are incarnated here on planet Earth who have had many lives in the Pleiades may perhaps consider themselves to be a Pleiadian soul, and will hold that energy much more strongly than human beings who are maybe just incarnated here on planet Earth, or human beings who've incarnated in different energy levels, like in the fourth dimensional or fifth, sixth, seventh, and so on. So
Brilliant. And I just want to come back to us meeting in Camelot Castle, which I thought was brilliant timing. And Magenta, you were so very much with me. I mentioned you on the video. I think I did anyway. You were so very much with me, like you were with me in spirit when I was there. And I have to say, pulling up into the castle driveway, there was blue and that I could see with my eyes, blue and purple light all around that place. And I was just like, and I got full inside and outside body tingles. You know, when you go like, not just goosebumps, but like internal ones. And it was like, whoa, they're here. I mean, it felt really strong. And then I get to the castle and realize you guys are there, which didn't surprise me. And actually, the girl that was there, young woman, Abby Flynn, she's sort of well known in the I Love You Me community because she'd been given 3 weeks to live and was dying of a 21 centimeter tumor. And she used the I Love You Me method and completely dispelled it. It just disappeared. And she's now had a baby and got an incredible life, really beautiful soul. And she was there with us. She just happened to be there with us. And that night that we were all sleeping in the castle together, she had an experience of being taken up into a ship. And she never had anything like that. And she said, like, it didn't feel like a dream. It felt super real. And we were all, you know, and she didn't quite know what to make of it as well. And I just wondered, does that happen a lot when people are around you guys? You know, you, Becky and Simon, does that happen a lot? I guess you must attract a lot of people who have those experiences, so that, you know, you've had those experiences, you can relate and help people with that. But also, did you just think that that's an energy of Camelot? Or is that because it's the Mr. T support that is surrounding that whole place? Like you said, I completely agree. I see Pleiadian energy with Mr. T. I completely relate to that energy. And if you like, I didn't think to call it Archon. I would have said more like the indigo warrior energy. That's how I perceive him. But anyway, yeah, like, do you seem to have that effect on lots of people, that they have those experiences around you?
Simon, do you want to answer that one?
Okay, well, first of all, I think that, you know, if you look at the energies that we're dealing with at the moment, they seem disparate. They seem to be all over the place, though they are joined and threaded. And of course, I sort of went public 10 years ago. Well, it's 10 years and a bit now with, you know, my story. And, you know, it was mainly to do with that aspect of, you know, understanding the way that humanity is being interfered with by one half and supported by another half. And, you know, it's incredibly private and personal for each individual. The question is whether they, A, understand what's happened to them, and B, do they act on it? You know, you might get an individual who walks to work every day and has 6 miraculous things that happen to them, but if they just shake their head, then they've lost that chance. They've not understood it, and then they've not had the courage to act on it. So often things will happen to people, and, you know, at that time in their life, they don't recognize what it means, and maybe at a later date it means something. So I've no doubt that the man with the letter T is here for an absolute reason. It wasn't just chance. You know, it was all designed to happen, and I think there's a lot of energy behind him, which has given him that support. But when we talk about the future, it's a very new age thing to imagine we're going to go from 0 to 60. We're going to go from you know, using money to not using money. We're going to go from fossil fuels to, you know, free energy, as the Americans call it. That can't happen without a total collapse of fabric. It has to be done gently. Now, I've always said that I wanted as much truth as possible to the public, but sometimes that's not actually feasible. Let's just say, for instance, there was a big news announcement tomorrow that said that suddenly they realized that what they were rolling out wasn't going to give anybody any protection or any immunity. There would be within 3 hours, there wouldn't be a loaf of bread left on the supermarkets. there would be absolute panic. And that's the problem we've got at the moment. We've got a very large base of people who are running from one, as they see it, crisis to another. They're not stabilized. And so we do, as guardians of information, have to be truthful, but we have to do it in a way that doesn't actually mean we lose half over the side of the boat. That's the difficulty we face. And it's incredibly frustrating when you spend your life or part of your life and there's a sizable portion of people who, for whatever reason, won't even engage with it. And at the end of the day, you have to say, I did what I had to do. I gave it my best shot. And I've always said, if I speak to 100 people and one person then wants to start doing his or her own research, then I've been successful, you know, with one person. And, you know, it's obviously more than that, but the point is, for all of us, we are doing good work. And I'll just do a little plug for all of us. I wish more people out there understood the amount of pressure, work, and difficulties we go through. And it's not all sweetness and bloody light. It's actually incredibly difficult personally, in the wider community and with ourselves. And, you know, people have said to me, I'm nearly finished now, people have said to me, oh, you know, can you arrange for me to meet an alien? I mean, that's one of the most often asked questions I get.
Really?
Actually, you don't want to meet them because your life will change totally. And while we're still in this 3D realm, you will have this dichotomy of what you suddenly know to be true and what the vast majority of the world won't accept to be true. You don't want to meet them yet. Wait until you've evolved, we've evolved, and then there won't be all this stigma that goes with it. And so, you know, it's not easy doing this. And frankly, obviously none of us would willingly do another job because we came here to do this. But when the time comes, I'm ready to do another job. I'm ready to do something else because this is your life. I call it the work. Becky knows that. I call this the work. And I've said to her, nothing else matters. And I know it doesn't always go down well, but nothing else matters but the work. The work comes first. And, you know, there will be a time when that's done. And then fantastic, we can all go to whatever we consider to be our recreation. But it is difficult, you know, and I don't want thanks for it, as I know you don't. I just want the job done, get it done, and then that's it. And then who knows what will happen.
Wow. Well, I'd like to honor all three of you and others out there who are doing this. I had Sasha last week and, you know, let him know just how many people he's validated. And it's the same for you three. You validate people again and again and again. And sometimes we don't know how far our own ripples go, that you were saying about earlier, Becky, about the impact that we make in other people's lives. And I know that you don't do it for that reason, that it's like your soul has to do what it's got to do. It's like, it doesn't matter if you make money or don't make money, or if people watch or don't watch, it doesn't matter. You do it anyway, no matter what. It's that unconditional, it has to happen. And I understand that completely, but at the same time, I want to honor you, that you make that choice, that you are in service, and that you do all help people, a lot of people. And you've been an incredible value to so many people, more than ever over the last year, over 2020. And so I feel like it's really wonderful that you've come on today with us to have this conversation, because to me, you're some of the stars of the 2020 time. You've been a huge support, and you know, you do bring a lot of light, and you are bringing a lot of light into 2021 for people, into the future, and for people to continue staying connected to you. And Magenta, you also have a Facebook group, don't you, that you started a few weeks ago? Is it just called Magenta Pixie? How can people find you?
Yeah, the Facebook group is called Magenta Pixie and the White-Winged Collective Consciousness of Nine, and that was a total accident. I really didn't want to do a group, as Becky knows. I've chatted to Becky. I must absolutely say, I did not understand the workload that you know, Becky and Simon, but obviously Becky behind the scenes running Connecting Consciousness. I had no idea, and I went, because Becky's like, I feel so close to her, and we're you know, we're good friends. We consider ourselves to be good friends. She's a soul sister, so I just automatically made her a moderator of the group. And then I had this message saying, oh, you've made me moderator. I'll try my best, but obviously I am doing Connecting Consciousness. And then when I got into the work needed for the group, I thought, oh my goodness, I can't believe I even made Becky a moderator, because how could you possibly even have time? I didn't want to do a group. It's just that Facebook shut my page down. I tried to make another page because I had 42,000 followers on there, and it was really nice to be able to go in and see all the comments. I got so much information as well from people and how they were feeling, and lots of questions. It was great. So for that to go wasn't that good really. And I tried to make another page 5 times and Facebook just wouldn't let me. And then I saw the group option and I thought, oh, I'll do a group, not realizing that it's very different. But yes, it's Magenta Pixie and the White Wing Collective Consciousness of 9. We're up to about 13,000 now.
Wow.
So absolutely, if you want to join the group, you're more than welcome. And I'm as active as in there as I can be, and I will be posting this video in there later. But as I said earlier to people, go look at Connecting Consciousness. You know, as far as I'm concerned, I think Becky and Simon are doing amazing work, and they've got such a fantastic complementary energy, because you've got this masculine, grounded sort of information delivered in such a measured and intelligent way. And I resonate so much with what Simon says. I actually class him as one of my main go-to sources of information and confirmation of what I'm getting, or clarification of the energy that I'm getting as to what that might be. And Sasha as well. I put Sasha and Simon up as, you know, my topmost sources of what's going on right now. And then with Becky, you've got this fantastic divine feminine energy and this amazing humility. And it's so important to have that. It's integration of the ego. And Becky's got that perfectly in that space, that just surrender to the ego aspect, so that when you look at Becky energetically, you can't even see the ego there because it's integrated so well. And the two of them together have got an amazing energy. So join Connecting Consciousness. And the same with you, Tara. Go look at I Love You Me. It's a fantastic model. Go where you feel your heart is called. And if you don't resonate there, then they'll be somewhere else.
Exactly.
Or start something yourself. Get online. Speak about your story. Everyone has a story to tell. Everyone can help in some way. As Simon says, if you can help just one person, you've done your job. And you can be proud of yourself for helping just one person at this point. It's so important. But thank you, Tara, for your words.
Oh, thank you. And everybody sending loads of love and gratitude and thanks to all of you on here. Now, you've been so generous. We've been on here for over 2 hours. That just flew by. Thank you for your time. I'm just wondering, do you feel up for just 2 or 3 quick fire answers, or are you guys just like needing lunch? How do you feel? Are you up for it, Magenta? You love answering questions. I love it.
I do love Q&A, yeah.
It's brilliant fun, isn't it? Guys, are you up for it? Honestly, I don't want to take up more of your time. But in terms of, okay, shift symptoms, this has been a big one for people. I personally have even been having lots of heart palpitations. I'm super healthy. I have an amazingly strong heart. I've been having heart palpitations, started in March, started in April. It's been more intense recently. Lots and lots of people are having heart palpitations as one of their symptoms. Anything you have to say, is this shift, is it indeed a shift symptom? Is it to do, you know, perhaps with solar flares or magnetic field of the earth? Because I've seen that I watch solar weather and the magnetic field has taken an absolute nosedive. We've got a very low magnetic field on the earth. Is it to do with that? Or is it just because we're all magnesium deficiency with the stress and we need to take magnesium? What are your thoughts on, is this a shift symptom?
Well, I'll let Becky and Simon speak on that. I'll just quickly say there are multiple shift symptoms of all different kinds. It's unique and subjective to the person. What I would say is, please don't put health conditions or health symptoms down to just the shift, when it may well be that. Absolutely it may. And don't just think, oh, there's something wrong with me, I need to see a doctor. But neither should you think, oh, it's just the Ascension. Always bear in mind that it's potentially one or the other or both, and take symptoms such as heart palpitations seriously. At least get it looked at and find a trusted doctor, because as we know, the medical profession has a hijacking over it now more than ever. So find a trusted doctor and do look into these symptoms physically. Rule that out first before you start putting it down to the shift. But yes, there are symptoms. The biggest one, really, I think, and heart palpitations does come into it, the biggest one I feel is the sleep patterns are all over the place with people. And I think what can really help, and I found for me, is don't use your electronics. Much as you're tempted to sit in bed and do all the latest research while you've got some time and look at videos and stuff, don't do that before you go to sleep, because you will have a better quality of sleep if you go to sleep and put your eye mask on, or be in a dark room and try to work with good sleep patterns. And if not, try and get a nap in the afternoon. But I'll let Becky and Simon speak on that.
No, I like very much what you said, Magenta. And, you know, obviously with the medical caveat, I was just going to say I wouldn't be surprised that our hearts are connected with the Earth's Schumann resonance. I wouldn't be at all surprised. And the Earth's Schumann resonance has been doing some very exciting, it's like she's been having palpitations. So it wouldn't be surprising to me that our hearts are following in line with that. That's all I wanted to add.
Things like the Van Allen belt, things like the shielding around the Earth, none of this was chance. This was placed there, and it was designed to remove harmful radiation, light waves. But with the change in the energy that the human race has required to activate them, the shielding had to be reduced, because it would, if it had been left at its normal operational level, it would have basically reflected or diffused much of that frequency that we require. That is why it's gone down. It's gone down deliberately so that we can then get the full blast, if you like. This is why things like chemtrails and everything else the bad people have been putting up to prevent or to slow down, that's their view, to slow down the ascension of humanity, because it's all about light waves, not waves that we can see with our eyes. It's about frequency. And what they've been doing, part of the chemtrailing process was designed to reflect back this energy to prevent or to slow down the human development. That's not worked. There has been a slight slowing down. That was about, I'd say, a year ago or 2 years ago. But I think we've caught up and we've exceeded that. And so there's a constant battle between the forces of ascension and those that want the status quo. The same people, for goodness sake, who were the group around the pyramids, or group around the Assyrian temples, and so on and so forth, right back through the Anunnaki and further. Those who reached a position of responsibility and influence and power, and suddenly saw that the natives were revolting, that the ordinary people were saying, we're not prepared to tolerate you anymore. You know, why have we got you on our back? And they've had to become more and more devious to hold that position. And that's what we're seeing now. And the more that humanity evolves and advances, the more we're catching them out, the more we're seeing. And I'll just finish off by saying that horrible man, Savile, for 50 years, that man survived and was protected. And then when humanity took the great jump, they couldn't hide it any longer. And we saw it. And who today would be a bad man or bad woman, mostly men actually, who'd be a bad man in government, because the people are seeing through it. 20, 30, 40 years ago, they're just getting away with it. They got elected or they got into power. They just did what they want with no concern. But now, you know, you're getting caught out, Mr. Bad Person. And so I think it's a real sign that humanity is just about ready to put its hand on the door handle and open it and step through it. I'm very positive about the future.
I love to hear the positivity. I love to hear the positivity. Talking of positive, I was going to go into actually, and I'm not going to go there, but a certain person with a huge amount of money that created a computer company has been funding the dimming of the sun with calcium carbonate and sulfur going up into the atmosphere to reflect the sun's rays. So we are you know, that's talk about sneaky, talk about, you know, trying to sabotage the Ascension. And of course, that's not going to happen. It's not going to work.
It's not in the positive timeline.
It's
No.
not, is it? It's just like, it's a done deal. It's a done deal what's happening. But I did want to quickly come into solar flashes. I know, Magenta, you've done videos on this, solar flashes and 3 days of darkness. Are we still expecting anything like this to come around in the next few months or something? Anybody want to talk on that, or just or not? No, no one wants to. Fair enough. Fair enough.
I'll just quickly say that I never went down that road because it was a timeline that was predicted but changed. I do think there's going to be some days of communication breakup. Absolutely convinced of it, where if you want to describe darkness as not being able to send a message to your friend, ironically, then I'll accept that. I think there will be some days of interruption, but you might have your friend down the road who has no interruption at all and she's perfectly fine, and then 3 blocks or a street down they're having a problem. It's not going to be across the whole planet. There will be interruption, but I don't think it's going to be anything like what it was anticipated.
Right. So I'm just in terms of putting out hope there, it's almost like people don't need to panic. People don't need to maybe worry about having, you know, being freezing cold or having no electricity or not having food, because that's been going on.
Yeah, I think you do have to worry, because otherwise you just become, you know, oh well, it's all right, everything's fine, I don't have to do anything for it. I think that it will be okay if enough of it actually put the effort in, put the time in. I mean, I'm saying, you know, I know already that large numbers of Connecting Conscience members are, as we speak, on their way to Washington, DC. And I need to put a notice out, unfortunately, that all the hotels are full and booked, and it's going to be very difficult. A lot of people are getting their motorhomes or what have you, and they're all going to go out and do that. So I think it's about saying that if you want the future that we all want, you don't just sit back in your armchair and expect it to happen. And when I used to do the big conferences, and I'd say to people, to the conference, you're the ones that made the conference happen because you've come here, and there's so many people who'll sit at home and watch it for free, and you know, that's okay, but there must always be enough people who are prepared to put some effort into it. And if that's not the case, then why on the name of God should the earth bother about us? If we are not prepared to march shoulder to shoulder with the earth and have that connection, which never lost, but we had a lot stronger a few thousand years ago. If we're not prepared to make that effort, then why should the earth bother about us? So you know, if you don't want to live in a freezing sort of Siberian type environment, either metaphorically or physically, then do something positive, whatever that might be. Do something. Don't let someone else do it. Yeah, that's me.
Good, well said. Thank you.
Tara, I would say very similar. Take action. Don't just sit. I'm not going to say, oh, that won't happen. I mean, the whole sun blotting out. No, that's not in the timeline at all. But some solar flares, pockets and areas where the power is taken out. Yes, there is an agenda for that to occur globally. Will that occur globally? No. We've spoken about higher Pleiadian assistance. It's only a certain level that the negative can actually go to, but don't sit back and think, oh, well, we're fine. You know, that the ETs have got our back. Let's just sit back and do nothing. We need to take action to create the reality we want, because the taking action is what lines up with the alignment to create the manifestation. So it's a difficult one, because it's like, right, do I go out and buy a wind-up radio, a solar-powered wind-up radio in case the power goes out? I'm taking action by being prepared in case the power goes out. But by buying that radio, am I buying into fear, and am I manifesting that timeline because I bought the radio? And it's not about the action on its own, it's your intention with the action. My intention to buy this wind-up radio, and yes, I bought one, and I bought one for every member of my family for Christmas, and they all looked at me, well, not all, but some of them looked at me like I was crazy, and I explained, put it away in a cupboard, But if it happens, you'll be glad I bought you a wind-up solar-powered radio. So the intention is I'm buying this to be prepared. If the power goes out, I'm still going to have a radio. It's got a torch in it as well. So I have now got a torch and I can still access some information if everything else goes out. But am I worried? No. Am I scared? No. Have I bought this radio through fear? Did I buy a radio for all my family members because of fear? Or did I do it to be prepared with love in my heart? This is the difference. And so, yes, take action. Because if you take action without fear, you are creating a response without fear to that action.
You're
Brilliant. So what actions?
proper prepper, aren't you, Magenta? You're a proper prepper, PP.
Proper prepper. So what actions would you advise people? Because there's a whole another, I mean, we're not going to go into it now. There's so many other things that potentially are going to come up, I think, in the next year that, let's say, are part of the resistance. They're part of the dark side, you know, to block this. And they may or may not happen. But what can people do? I remember back in 2012, when there was the threat of the Nibiru crashing into the earth or coming super close, whichever one it was, my friend went out and bought like army style sleeping bags that you hang in a tree and loads of baked beans and all this camping equipment. And they bought some woodlands so that they could go and live in the woods with their hanging sleeping bags and the whole lot. She got proper kitted out. And then, of course, we didn't collide with Nibiru, nothing happened. And I personally, I know a lot of people who have been waiting for these, you know, events that have been saying, prepare for this, because this is going to happen. And enough people start doing it. And then they go, oh my God, I better join in too. Much like the toilet roll situation in the UK. It's like, well, shit, everybody else is buying it. I better buy it or I'm not going to have any. I don't want to be left out, right? So realistically, in your opinions, what is the best way that people can prepare that ensures that they're taking care of themselves and their communities, on their families, but it's not a fear thing? Just like you with your radio, Magenta. What do you recommend?
That's going to look different to each person, very subjective. We are preparing just by getting together to do this talk now. We're taking action. So for some people, that's going to be helping their families. For some people, that will be preparing. Maybe one member of the family is storing food or something and they feel they're taking action in that area. Or it may be joining in some kind of gathering and holding up a sign. It can look like many, many different things. So it's be in alignment with the heart so that you know what you need to do and what you have to do. And have multiple reasons as to why you purchase something. Like I said, with a wind-up radio, it's just nice to have one. I mean, power cuts happen all the time, even if the power's off for just half an hour. It's handy to have. So it's not just about the dire situation. And as for your friends who bought all the camping equipment, at least they are awake beyond 3D. They weren't necessarily realizing that Nibiru was not a planet that's going to crash into us, but was a trigger, a DNA trigger for awakening. They didn't realize that, but they weren't sitting in 3D and ignoring everything. They were in the fourth dimension. And that's where you are when you are in this fear of something, some disaster happening and you needing to prepare. That's more 4D. But preparation, as I said, when taken without fear, is a sensible thing to do. You don't have to go crazy. So, but yeah, I'll let Simon and Becky answer that.
Brilliant answer. Thank you.
I was just thinking that the person who's done that, well, if they've bought themselves some land with trees and they've got a nice sleeping bag, you know, I would get a tent if I could and just enjoy some time living on the land, you know, having camping holidays and connecting to Mother Earth and the stars. And there's nothing, you know, I find much more exciting. I love that sort of thing. You know, they've lined themselves up for some amazing shamanic experiences. They might meet some lovely, you know, deer or wild animals or birds or something.
That's exactly what happened though. They used it a lot. It wasn't just a, you know, it got used. Even the tins of beans that were stashed in the boxes, the army boxes in the woods. She made it fun essentially, but
good. I'm glad
both, isn't it?
I'm very glad to hear that. Going back to connecting consciousness, On Maybe Pro CC, well, there's different things that we do within Connecting Consciousness. We have many country coordinators, and some of our bigger countries with bigger membership have many regional coordinators. So for example, the USA, Canada, Australia, England, Germany, to name, I think about 5, have got many regional coordinators, so that it's the area split up in smaller groups. So people ideally, before last year's happened with all the not being able to travel anywhere or meet anyone in person regulations happened, people were meeting up in groups, and that in itself is incredibly supportive. Now people are meeting up in Zoom, local Zoom sessions, so they can chat about any topics that interest them. They can, the coordinator may have an agenda, say, what would you like to talk about? So they've got a set agenda. Obviously other topics come up, but it's a place to connect with others and talk about what's relevant. And some of those things may well be absolutely the relevant topics, hot topics of the week or the month, including perhaps preparing for some kind of event. In Maybe Pro CC, we've got many different open topic groups where members, sorry, I got something in my eye, where members all around the world can talk with each other. And one of my favorite groups actually is one to do with permaculture and, working with Mother Nature. So, people are approaching this from so many different points of view. Some people are working with the land that they have, whether it's a back garden or an allotment or, a relative or friend's garden. People are learning to work with the soil, are learning to work with seeds, are learning to create, in that way, and are finding immense joy from that. Others are doing it from, more of a prepper point of view, but some are doing it from more of working with Mother Nature point of view. And then we've just got so many different groups about so many different topics. People can just focus on the topics that they're interested in. If someone's just interested in Nibiru, they can talk about that. If they're just interested in aliens, they can talk about that. If they're interested in geopolitics, people can, group together and chat about that. So I think it is finding what you're interested in, and it could be everything, or it could just be one or two things, and then focusing on that. But yeah, I mean, in terms of preparing, it's a good idea to chat with others, in the areas that you're interested in.
Thanks, Becky. And I suppose people can also start their own groups if they want to prepare.
Definitely.
You can actually, because often people ask us questions, but I always say, well, ask yourself the question first and see what answer you come up with. You don't actually need answers from us. If we have a question, what do? We ask ourselves. We check in, or we check in with our spirit. It's like, don't be lazy, people. If you have a question, you ask your heart, you ask your own soul, you think what you need practically, what's important to you, and put energy into it. I think that's brilliant. And people can, of course, go and create their own groups and come into that community. I think community is, we rubber stamp that word massively into 2021, is we need to be in community. Did you have anything you wanted to say on that one, Mr. Simon?
I was just having yet another cuddle here. About the 5th one so far. About 6 years ago, I started saying to people that they should put some food away, and I said, you're probably going to need it for 2 or 3 weeks. And I didn't get many people, but I got a few, during the closing period, where people said, it was so great because I listened to you, and our local supermarket was completely stripped of food, which it was earlier last year. And I was able to, give some to my elderly parents and things like that. And so preparing isn't about panic, and this is what Magenta's saying. It's about doing it in a way. And when I was telling them, there was plenty of stuff on the supermarket, so it wasn't like go and do panic buying. It was like, just go and get a few bits when you can. And I mean, you've got to put your preach. And we had some 8 or 9 crates of food that we had collected over the last sort of few years, which were preservable, because it would be awful if I was running around and I'd run out of food, and yet I'm the one saying to everybody, be prepared. So we were prepared, and those people who listened and had a few pennies extra to spare and who did it, and didn't do it out of a fear, but out of a self-respect way of, I'm going to make sure that I can look after myself and those around me, then it paid dividends, because those people were in a position where, they could look after their pets, because there was dog food and cat food that had run out. And I always made the point that they only needed enough for 2 or 3 weeks. I've never ever bought into, we're going to be doomed and wiped out and all the rest of it. And so that's not our destiny. Whoever's behind this fantastic,
it's not our destiny at all.
Spend all of that energy for us just to go out like that. What would be the point of that?
And he blipped out.
Yeah, so basically, I guess we're coming to an end now. I certainly am in need of
we really are, definitely a cup of tea
for making this happen. It's really lovely, because the energy that you have and the other two have is one that I think we should aspire to, simply because it's a much more balanced way without fear. And that's the big thing for me. Fear that I don't have enough money, fear that this will happen. I remember, I'll give you this story and then I will have to go, but I remember this back in the 1980s. I remember a guy, I guess he was a dad, and his daughter, I suppose, and she was about 8 or 9 or 10 years age, and she was walking along and she said to him, do you think people know that we have Sky Television? Because they obviously, where they live, the disc, the actual dish had been placed in a position where you couldn't see it. And so here there's the young girl already into control, wanting material things. Oh, do you think people know that we've got a satellite dish? Finally, when I used to be live in another place further north, and I've told this before, and it's really worth it. A 2.5, 3-year-old kid coming out screaming from a sweet shop, screaming. Everyone sort of stopped and looked, and I don't know if mum or dad, I can't remember, came out. And I thought dad came out, I think, and I thought she was shouting to start with, I want my mummy, I want my mummy. She was about 3 years old. What she was actually shouting was, I want money, because she's in a sweet shop. She can't have the sweets, so she's not screaming and she's shouting, I want money, I want money. Now, that's why we've got to be forgiving of people, because if that's the way you're programmed at 3 years old, no wonder people 30, 40, 50, what have you, are struggling to break free from it. It's such an insidious trap that's been put around humanity. And we must never underestimate the difficulty for people to break free from that. That's why we must always be patient.
Brilliant. You guys have said some incredibly powerful things today. Absolutely brilliant. We've covered tons as well, and you've been so generous. Do you have, before you go off your cup of tea, is there any final words that you want to each share, any final messages of hope or of light or of positivity for 2021?
I would just like to say that the energy is very different this year than it was last year. Last year was a heavy, intense energy with this sort of closing in feeling. And that's lightened up this year, very much so. The Nine have told me this is to do with astrological influence, but also the way that humanity's emotions and thoughts are connected with astrological influence and are merged with them. And the fact that so many people have awakened last year and are coming forward into this year already with this new knowledge and this new awakened way of thinking. And then this will continue in this wave of so much more individuals that wake up. And that in itself creates light. So it's a much lighter year. That doesn't mean it's not going to have challenges with it. We are looking at the collapse of the old system on every level. But I think right at the beginning last year, even amongst the light workers, there was a lot of confusion and a lot of fear. And I went through times when I thought, is this going to happen? And could this happen? I'm talking to the Nine lots and lots to, as you're saying, checking in with yourself. That's what I'm doing, talking to the Nine. What does this mean? Is this going to happen? What can we do? And luckily getting answers. But I'm very confident, as Simon said, he's very confident, and I know Becky feels the same. I'm very, very confident as to where humanity is going. And I do feel, from the perspective of having made that positive choice within the bifurcation, that we are seeing from that level, and it's not to be misinterpreted as literal, from that level of having made that choice, we are seeing a theatre play out. We are seeing a game play out that we've already won. But if you go and take that too literally, then you can think, oh, well, she says we've already won, whereas we haven't, because this is going to happen and that's going to happen and this hasn't happened yet. You have to look at both of these realities. But when you can do that and blend the two, you will find that there's a lot to be excited about, because what others that are not aware will see as a complete collapse of their, not just their the system, it's their reality, because their reality is so merged with the system. Like Simon was saying about the money, they are what they see as a complete collapse of their reality, we know is an exposure and a disclosure of the darkness within the reality and the chance to be free. So it's exciting for us. It's devastating for them and frightening, but it's exciting for us. So let's hold that excitement, because what's coming for us, and eventually for everyone as they come into where we are, or maybe not everyone, but let's hope a majority of people, where we're going is wonderful, because for the first time in thousands of years, we are becoming free as a human race. We are meeting our destiny. So I'm very positive about this coming year.
Yay. By the way, what was the number at Uluru? You said that there was the tipping point number. What was the number? You said we'd reached.
Was that me that said that?
No, I think it was Simon and Becky.
I think it might have been me, and I don't know exactly, but it is over. I think it's a few 100,000. It's like it's not that many. It's less than 1 million.
Small, incredibly small numbers. 250 to 275,000. That's all. Yeah.
Wow. So well done, everybody. Everybody can give themselves a pat on the back. Any final words, beautiful Simon and Becky?
I just wanted to add as well that, you know, going back to the point, it's going to be quite an exciting year. A lot's going to happen. Try not to get too caught up emotionally in all the twists and turns. Try and keep a more even keel. Try and see how you are responding emotionally and mentally to the changes that are going on externally, and see if you can balance that out with your own internal work. See if you can do your own internal monitoring, because how you respond, you know, how you are feeling internally and how you respond to things is how you are expressing yourself, and that in turn will influence and affect others. So if you can do your own internal work and keep fairly calm, keep fairly positive, then that will be, you know, help others around you, and it will help yourself as well.
Beautiful. Thanks, Becky. Simon?
No, I think I'll leave it with a divine feminine energy, so I won't say any more.
I'm very humble and gracious. Thank you so much. And I just want to come back as well and say to everybody, we talk about not having responsibility for other people's decisions, but I feel very much we do have a responsibility to the children and to the children of our future. And much like that perfect story that you just gave us there, Simon, like we can be doing that to our children now and causing them a great deal of distress and fear, because we're in a great deal of distress and fear and responding to everything here, there and everywhere. Whatever the information is, we can still be in reaction. And that is definitely impacting our children and conditioning them for the rest of their lives. And we are creating our future in every single moment, not just on the energetics and in the quantum field, with every thought, with every breath, with every feeling, with every heartbeat. We do have a responsibility. And I think it's important for people to own their responsibility, that like you said, Becky, we have an impact on others. We have an impact on all of reality. And so when we own that responsibility, that's us being in our power. You become a sovereign being. You become an empowered, true human being by doing that. you know, we've got into all of this darkness and all this craziness because we abdicated that power. We neglected and denied and said, no, it doesn't make a difference. I don't make a difference. Well, we do. Every single one of us, whether we act in fear in one moment or we in meditating in bliss in another. And we are constantly creating our future with every now moment that we're in. And can we all, and I really want to almost offer this as a prayer and offer this energy to ripple out to everybody watching this and all the people that you can come into connection with, and even just the frequency and the sound vibrations from my mouth right now, to ripple this out into our future timelines, that the children are sacred, that they are protected, that they are loved, and need to be raised in sovereignty and seen as sovereign beings and seen as a sovereign soul who's here for a divine reason, who has a divine purpose. They're here to seed the new earth. Every child on this earth right now and every child coming to the earth is here for that divine reason. They're here for the new earth. They're seeded and coded for that very reason. And so they need deconditioning, not more conditioning. So as much as we can, bring our own consciousness to ourselves first, because then we can actually support and raise and create an environment for our children that they can then seed this future in the way that they've been divinely designed to do so. So we have that responsibility. And can we all, as adults, take responsibility for every child on this earth and do whatever we can from our true hearts to create that incredible future for our beautiful children and grandchildren. That's what I wanted to say about the future for 2021. And you've all been absolutely incredible. I'm sure we're going to bump into each other and cross paths again. And thank you for all the work you do. And so much love to all three of you, from myself, from the viewers, and speaking from the universe itself. You're completely amazing. Thank you so much, and I love you.
Thank you.
See you soon. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Take care. And if you felt this was really good, please share it with your communities. Loads of love. A happy new year.